Welcome to episode 352 of the DFO Rundown presented by Bet365. Download the app today and use the promo code NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N, to get in on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Of course, you have NFL conference finals. You got a boatload of games in the National Hockey League this week that are exciting. Heck, if you could bet on suspensions, that might be the bet of the day in the National Hockey League, as Connor McDavid and Tyler Myers will have hearings for their cross-checks in the waning moments of the Oilers-Canucks game on Saturday night. So I guess let's start there, Frank. Almost 6 years ago, in February of 2019, Connor McDavid was suspended for the first time in his career. So he's not a repeat offender because it's that long time ago, but you look at his and then you look at Myers. Do you think they're the same, different? What happens here this afternoon? Both will have hearings later today.
I think they're the same. Why would you think they'd be different?
Well, no, in the sense of, do you think they're going to get the same amount of games?
Is Myers a repeat offender?
I don't think so.
Well, then I would suggest no. I'd say in this case, a cross-check to the face is a cross-check to the face.
Yeah.
Does it matter that, I don't know, Bouchard seemed to be more injured than Garland?
Well, that you wonder. And then and it shouldn't matter the actions prior, but Bouchard didn't really do anything, right? And Myers just cross-checked him in the face. His was kind of surprising. McDavid was clearly mad at Garland. Doesn't excuse it. He can't do what he did. But I wonder if they look and say, well, geez, we can see maybe why you're upset. But you're like, Myers, what are you doing? You're just attacking a guy for no reason. So that's, to me, the only way they were different was there was at least Garland and McDavid wrestling match prior. It's still a bad reaction by McDavid. Although Chris Pronger thinks, hey, if you're the star, and coming from Pronger, who is an elite player, Hall of Fame player, and a guy who was suspended lots, he's probably got some truth to it at some point. Maybe you got to feel like you have to stand up for yourself and, getting suspended every now and then. Some guys will say it's worth it.
Oh, I think it's totally worth it. I think standing up for yourself and drawing a line and saying, I'm not going to take it anymore, I think is critically important. I think that's separate and aside from the fact that I think this is a very clear statement when I make it. There is not a player in the salary cap era that has taken more abuse that's been called less than Connor McDavid. And it's not close. No one's taken more abuse in the salary cap era. The reason I frame it that way is because guys got abused all the time in the clutching and grabbing days. It was a different game, but there are 4 calls a game you could make on plays against McDavid alone that don't get called. That's probably light. The hooks, the slashes, whatever it might be, he's so strong and his edge work is so good, he doesn't go down.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that typically players in the league would go down for, and not embellishing at all. He just doesn't go down.
Well, this year, Frank, and I looked it up earlier. I can't remember the exact number, but he wasn't even in the top 40 of penalties drawn when I looked it up early this morning. I think he's like 45th or 6th or something like that.
Tyler says he's 47th in penalties drawn this year.
47. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So which is odd to me. I look at it and the NHL.
He says if you go to penalties drawn per 60 minutes, like relative to how much ice time he gets, he's 237th.
Yeah. And he has the puck a lot and he's pretty quick. But he
has the puck on his stick probably more than anyone. I mean, that's a forward.
This is not new to the NHL. Ask Mario Lemieux. Remember Mario Lemieux basically said, I'm going to retire. You sick of it. Brett Hall came out. Like, this is not new in the NHL, allowing star players to get abused. Other leagues in the NBA and the NFL, their star guys sometimes get blown on, right? Like in the NFL right now, fans can't stand it that Patrick Mahomes, when he gets hit, how often it gets called, like, there was a roughing the passer penalty yesterday. You're like, what? That shouldn't have been a penalty. Barely got hit. But that's what they call. Whereas the NHL goes the opposite way. We're like, no. Our best guys, and not just McDavid, but you're probably fair in your statement that he takes the most. but there's lots of star guys around the league who take more than the other players and don't get called on.
Well, so the reason I brought it up is let's spin it back to this weekend. There is a serious lack of accountability for NHL officials. And I'm not just talking about addressing things publicly, although that's much needed. Some kind of report, either from NHL hockey ops or the officiating department or something. I mean, let's think about the last week for McDavid, because that's really what this is going to be talked about is, well, look, he's taking matter into his own hands. He's dirty, whatever it is that you want to say. People didn't like the chicken wing elbow. But again, standard of officiating, that clear as day was a minor penalty that went uncalled. I know that doesn't make the Minnesota Wild feel any better. Marcus Johansson out with a concussion, but it's a minor penalty. And then people say, oh, well, why isn't there a fine? Well, had the referees done their job and called a minor penalty, then they probably aren't complaining for a fine.
Yeah, and every elbowing is always to the head. Just let's point out. Have you ever seen an elbowing call that isn't to someone's head? They're not all fine.
So then let's talk about Saturday. Had any part of that sequence against Connor Garland, a wrestling match, hey, just call a penalty. Just even if you want to go even up and say, hey, we're going to blow the whistle, stop play, both these guys off. That's what normally would happen. Why is it that because this devolves the way that it does, McDavid needs to cross-check him in the face in order to send a message, to get him off of him, whatever it might be? That's the part that everyone's talking about today, not the 20 seconds of grappling in the middle of the ice in which, again, no one's accountable. It's a standard of officiating that I think the real thing no one's really talked about is how many true veteran officials have been transitioned out over the last 10 years. Think about all the names you know, all the guys you know. There's a handful left.
Yeah,
it's changed and not for the better.
No, it's changed. And the other big thing is I talk to players is a lot of the young referees are like, no one talks to me. You can't talk to me. And it can never have a conversation, right? They shoo guys away all the time. There's, I really think the NHL erred when they took the name bars off the referee's name. Like, I think lots of players can, I don't even know who the refs are sometimes, right? Like you need to have a relationship, but now
that's the way they want it. That's the way they want it is see nothing, know nothing, speak of nothing. And by the way, we have the best officials in the world. I'm not saying they don't do a good job or they don't have a difficult job, but why is it that the NFL, the NBA, they don't have any issue dissecting the calls that their own officials make, and we somehow have everyone programmed from an NHL perspective that these guys don't make any mistakes?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think now it's got to work both ways because there's games when the refs official great. And I get why they're hesitant because it's like people only want to talk to them when they make a bad call. They never want to talk to them about when they make a good call. So there is that we have to at least address that.
Oh, wait. So what now? We need to celebrate you for doing your job?
Correctly? No, but you can't but you don't just talk to the players when they make a bad play. You talk to them when they make a good play.
So okay, let me just work out your theory for a second from a media perspective. Okay, let's just hypothetical. Let's say that you're allowed to send a pool reporter down to speak to an official. Okay?
Yeah.
Good or bad, whatever happens. You can send and they can ask a question or two and then share it with everyone, which is much needed. Let's say that's the case. Are we going to be writing stories now about good calls made? What's the headline? Ref does job? I don't understand. What are we talking about here?
Well, you can talk. You can explain because first of all, let's be real about half the media people don't understand the rules properly on what they're supposed to be called and what we see on
separate
TV.
Side issue.
I know, but so then what you see on TV is also the camera angle that isn't in the same vision of sight as what the referee sees on the ice. So what the referee sees, if he's standing somewhere, because I did a whole segment for years on my show about it and learned a ton. And the number one thing where most calls are missed is because they're not in the right position. So what happens is the TV, if they want to be better, needs to show here's where the ref was standing. And if the ref's looking right at the call and doesn't make the call, then you're like, okay.
How many times does that happen? It's every game. The guy's standing there staring at it and doesn't make the call.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, right? I don't think the officiating is that bad, right? Like this sequence was bad. There's no question, like how there's not a call before and all the other guys. I totally agree with that. But at the same time, all I'm saying is you don't want to just send a pool guy down. Well, I think this was a missed call, so that's it. Sometimes you have to have questions.
That's not it. It's not, I think this was a missed call. It's, can you explain? All we're asking for is context. Can you explain what you saw or how you arrived there?
Yeah, that's what I mean. But you can ask him that question. You can ask him that question about a good call too sometimes that people think should have been a call, but the right call was made by not making it a call. That's what I'm saying. As long as you ask both ways.
That would be different. But they're immune to that. And then they're immune to any sort, like the internal criticism. They get graded on every game.
Yep.
Everything's looked at. So why is it that we can't acknowledge publicly, as if we're going to hurt their feelings, that they made a mistake when they know they made a mistake? Why is it that the NBA or NFL can send out full-fledged reports after games and say, yeah, we blew that one? Why are their officials and their, is it their hubris? Is it their, what is it? We need to protect their image. What, I don't understand. What's the thought process? Their ego? Are they that sensitive?
But who makes the decision? Is this Bettman?
Yeah, this is right at the top.
Yeah. So that's that. But that's, if you look at Gary's playbook for the history of the time, Frank, everything's always great until it's a year before the CBA. And then suddenly, well, geez, right? That's pretty much been the playbook for decades under Gary's tenure. Everything is great. Everything's rosy. Tell everybody everything's awesome right up until the point we got to negotiate. Then suddenly, wow, there's some problems here because now we might want some other things. But that's always been what it is. So I don't, I could get mad, but really, I don't think
living in fantasy land, though.
Yeah,
this
I totally agree with
where
you.
every call made every day is perfect, and it's just not real. It needs to end. It does, for everyone's sake, for teams, for players, for gamblers, for fans, for everyone. This idea that the correct call is made 100% of the time. We're not saying they don't do a good job, or that they don't work at it or try or any, like, it's not an indictment. It's human nature is what it is. And I said all of that and led us down this path just to say McDavid does not get absolved for a cross-check to the face. Not at all. And should be and will be suspended. My guess is he gets 2 games.
Yeah, the Oilers and the Canucks play on Thursday. That's the second game for both. I think minimum is 2 games for both players.
Okay, but there should have been a call made before that and never should have got to the cross-check.
Yeah, well, I would agree. And that's why I wonder when I asked you if there's a difference is though, do they look and say, well, Myers was basically unprovoked. There was nothing that occurred there for him to just cross-check guy in the face. Right now, the actions are the same, but I wonder, do they look at the previous lead up? Does that impact the decision, do you think, of them? Like, does an unprovoked attack get you a different result than a retaliation?
I doubt it. At the end of the day, they should suspend on the result, not the intent, not the lead up.
No, I agree with you.
Not on injury. They should suspend based on what was the action.
Yeah.
And the action in both cases was a cross-check to the face.
Yeah, I think it's 2 or 3 games is what I'm going to guess.
And for the Oilers, a little vacation for McDavid before the 4 Nations.
Yeah. It's too bad because they're playing Washington, right? 2 of the top few teams, 2 best teams in the league over the last 40 games. So, they'll be without him for that, and then probably the rematch. And if you're the Canucks, though, that's a trade-off you'll take. Tyler Myers out for Connor McDavid. It's a trade you'd make all day if you're the Canucks.
Yeah.
Oh. Now let's stick with the Oilers for a second. What do you make of the John Klingberg signing?
I think it's a worthy gamble. I am not a John Klingberg believer, but I also haven't seen John Klingberg since the hip resurfacing surgery. I knew that he lost mobility when, in the last games that we saw him in, does he have that back? But I think, to me, the larger question is, does John Klingberg have his confidence back? Because the player that he was when he left Dallas after leaving that deal on the table, he was a shell of himself. And I get it too. Like, again, part of it is human nature. You leave $50 million on the table and it probably eats at your soul.
Yeah.
But Anaheim, Minnesota, Toronto, we saw lots of John Klingberg video to suggest that he's not it. But if you're Edmonton and you need a right shot second pair defenseman who can move the puck a bit, and it's going to cost you no assets and a little bit of cap space, I think the quicker you can get him in the lineup and start answering your question, the better off the Oilers will be in terms of how do we approach this deadline now on March 7th, knowing that we may still need to fill that exact role.
Well, I think this is a 6-week audition for John Klingberg.
Yeah.
And so they look, and now obviously there's 2 weeks of that where they don't play. He has been skating for the past 6 months. So it's obviously something that they built up, and, you can be in skating shape, but then, the only way to get in game shape ultimately is to play some games. So, I would think they'd want him to get in sooner than later. He'll practice today with the team for the first time. Do I think he could play tomorrow? I guess there's a chance, but I'd probably, they're probably going to want more than one practice. We'll see. And you're at home, so, you can kind of pick and choose some of your changes and stuff like that. But I think they will give him a run. And they've played Kulak and Stetcher and even Brown when he's been in the lineup with Darnell Nurse. And I fully expect him to play Klingberg with Nurse. The way Nurse has played, it's going to make it a little bit easier for him to come in. If he could be the John Klingberg of the first 7 years of his career, then you're good. But the last few, Frank, and how much of that was, you're playing banged up. You never fully know. And the other thing is, we've seen Patrick Kane's come back and he's looked pretty good, right? He came back last year, had 47 points in 50 games after his surgery, but we had other guys who didn't play again. So who knows how good he's going to be until we see him.
Yeah. Again, worth a try, but get him in the lineup as soon as you can, because to find out, and not saying he's going to be perfect early, but to find out as much information and intel as you possibly can about the status of his game is going to be hugely beneficial for the Oilers.
Moving out to the East, and just in a 10-game span, you see how much things change, Frank. In the last 10 games, the Rangers, Columbus, and Montreal have picked up 15 points each. Detroit has 14. Boston and Pittsburgh, 7. And now Pittsburgh was behind anyway. They're even farther behind now. They used to be close to those teams. Now they're out. And Boston's allowed all of those teams to either catch them or pass them in just a span of 10 games. And it's it's kind of fascinating to look at that race. Ottawa, Columbus, Montreal with the big win over the Rangers yesterday. They tie it late, and then they win it. Patrick Laine, and another goal for Laine. He's got 12 goals on the season, a huge one for them. And Boston's going the wrong direction. You saw, Ottawa's able to come back and beat them 6-5. And it's like, I'm Boston, man. The more you watch them, it's just, you thought, okay, they turned things around a little bit early with their coaching change, but now it's like they're right back to where they were prior to the coaching change.
I think we're seeing that the coaching bump is a 3-game thing for the most part. The St. Louis Blues are back to where they were. The Chicago Blackhawks are back to where they were. Not saying it doesn't work or the coach doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's more of a prayer than anything.
Yeah, like Detroit they won 7 in a row. They're 7-3 now under McClellan since they've lost their last 2, and they're still a 500 team. So they are 7-3 in those 10 games. But we'll see now. Was it just an extended early bump, and now they're back to just being an average team? That's going to be the question for them.
But how about the Rangers though? 1 regulation loss in their last 10.
Yeah, I've been saying it. The Rangers, they've got the most talent, Frank, of Ottawa, Columbus, Montreal, Boston, the Rangers. Like, they got the most talent. They should be the team that makes it. That's why they were the one team. We've talked about teams. I said the Islanders are done. Sabres are done. The Pittsburgh Penguins to me are done. The Rangers, I would never say that, even when they were 14th, because they have more talent and they still have lots of runway, right? Like, they still got 34 games left to play, 36 actually for them. So they got more than enough time here to make up 4 points, really 3 points on Columbus. They're not in a huge deficit at all.
So you mentioned the Bruins and the Penguins in your bad category.
Yeah.
Over the last 10.
Yeah.
One team you didn't mention that has the same exact number of points in their last 10 games as the Pittsburgh Penguins is the New Jersey Devils.
Yep.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about the New Jersey Devils?
Well, yeah, like they pretty much, first place in that division, I think, is done now. The Capitals got 11-point lead and they got games in hand. That I don't see them making that up. So, they're right now, they're kind of poised. Hey, are we going to battle with Carolina, right? And Carolina's got 3 games in hand. They're 1 point back. So they're ahead of them in points percentage for sure. So my thing about New Jersey has always been because they played way more games than everybody. So there was a long time, Frank, where they looked better than they were because of having extra games already played. So I think the Devils are good. Like, I don't think they're great. And now you've got a little bit of, internal, you got the young player Nemec coming. If I don't play here, something's got to change. So, there's a small little drama that goes on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think it was that. That's not even what he said.
Yeah. Well, he's not the big deal. I still look at New Jersey and they don't give up a lot, which is funny, but they don't score enough. And that to me is their concern.
I'm not really concerned about that. They've defended well all year.
Yes, I agree.
And they really, I think, had a big culture change with the vets that they brought in. I mean, you look at a Brendan Dillon coming in and the impact that he's had. And by the way, I know we talked about him for sure. Jonathan Kovacevic has been
unreal for them.
Yeah, unreal. So the changes, that's really where Simone Nemec, that's where the frustration comes in. It's not, I'm not playing this year. It's more so, what is my long-term path to get playing in New Jersey? Where's the hole going to be in the lineup for me to become a full-time NHLer again?
Yeah. Because there's Kovacevic, Hamilton, and Pesce are the 3 right defensemen ahead of him.
So if you're re-signing Kovacevic, what are you doing with Nemec?
Great question.
And Nemec is not a third pair guy. I don't think that's not his trajectory. Like, you don't come in and say,
not
hey,
long term.
Right? Yeah, you don't have him come in and say, hey, you know what, Kovacevic, we're gonna let you go, and we're gonna plug Nemec in there as third pair. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, but the thing about Kovacevic is, like, good for him. He's having this unreal year. He's a UFA. Like, if you're him, do you test the market? Because you might be able to, like, this is your chance. He's 27, right? 28. Like, you got a chance to hit a home
What's
run.
he going to get?
2.5, 3?
Wouldn't the Devils just pay that and keep him?
Yeah, they might, but
he's playing 20 minutes a night. I think give him like 3 times 2.25 or something.
Yeah, like, it's funny because they're in New Jersey, their top 5D play between 1946 and 21 minutes. Like, it's pretty even across the board between Pesce, Hamilton, Siegenthaler, Hughes, and Kovacevic. And so there's not much to separate there, right? So they probably have to look and determine, what's their best path forward. And
but they knew this when they re-signed Pesce. Sorry, not re-signed, when they signed Pesce.
But did they? I don't know if they thought Kovacevic was going to be this good.
No, but even then, though, you draft Nemec as a lottery pick. He's not. So what was the foresight there? We're going to sign Pesce, and ultimately he's going to be our third pair D, right side.
Yeah. Well,
either that or they made a determination last summer that Nemec just isn't it.
Yeah. Well, I think they went in the Kovacevic. When they acquired him, I think they thought he'd be a good third pair defenseman. I don't think they thought he'd be this good, right? Because if they did, then it turns out to be a steal anyway. But
you're missing what I'm saying, though. You're missing what I'm saying. You've got Hamilton here, first pair.
Yeah.
You
Pesci.
spend 5.5 per year on a long-term 6-year deal with Pesci. He's your second pair guy. Even if you're not sure what's happening with Kovacevic, he may or may not make the team. You just drafted Simone Nemec in 2022, second overall.
Yeah.
You've cut off his ability to advance.
Well, no, he can. I think it's a proper, you come in, you're a young defenseman. You can be our third pair guy, play 16 minutes a night, which he's playing, and learn to develop. And if you outplay guys, then we can elevate you. I think too often, because New Jersey, he's a different lottery pick. Most lottery picks, Franks, go to teams that suck for quite a while, right? Like, how many of those teams make the playoffs 2 of the 3 years since you're drafted? Not many. And that's what New Jersey's going to do. So it is different than most number 2 picks because the quality of team he's going to. And you're right, they added Pesci, so that makes it more. But I think most young defensemen aren't capable of being legit top 4 guys on a playoff team. You could be a top 4 guy, Frank, on a non-playoff team all day.
Agree. But you brought him in to play a full NHL season as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old. Right? So then what? Now he's back in the, like, put yourself in his, all I'm saying is put yourself in his shoes. You don't see a ready, wide open path to walk through the door. You spent a full year there, played almost 20 minutes a night. Your game fell off in the last half of the season, predictably.
Yeah.
Now you've got good numbers again in the AHL. The last 3 weeks, he's been excellent. Now what?
No, I'll be honest, Frank, I got very little time for the player who's played 69 NHL games acting like, oh my God, this is just the worst for me. And I've been so hard done by. I get a little tired.
That's a crappy translation is what that is of what he said. The question was, are you going to ask for a trade? And he said no. He basically said, no, but we'll have to see how things go.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, fine. And I don't know, even asking for somebody saying, hey, like probably would have had a better question. The guy, like, why would I ask for a trade? I'm a young player. I'm still developing. Like, he's 20 years of age. It's only his second year of pro hockey in North America. Like, this is not a guy who's been floundering, and he played 60 games. And guess what? They didn't make the playoffs. They weren't that good defensively. Right. So he's part of it. So you're better off to gain confidence. And too often, and I get it, but young players and their agents, they get too focused on the here and the now, and they don't think big picture. He's got to learn to play defense better at the pro level.
I think you're misreading. I'm just saying, I'm not picking at you. I just think you're misreading it. David Jiricek was picked 4 picks down the draft board, and he's already forced his way out of Columbus.
Yeah, you can do it. But
I'm just saying that's just not how this generation of player works. It's not just like, hey, you're 69 games into your career, shut up and take it. There really isn't a path. Just like Columbus, when they started playing guys ahead of Jiricek that quite obviously don't have it and won't ever have it. What's the point? What am I doing here?
Well, let's be honest. Jiricek got traded to a team that also put him in the American League, and the only reason he got recalled was because they had 3 injuries on their back end.
Totally different story.
How's it different?
It's not that it's same thing with Nemec here, I would imagine. It's not that he has an issue playing in the AHL. The issue is, what is my path? And when a team starts to close off the path, that's when you say, I got a GTFO.
Yeah. And he can say that, and we'll see if he's good enough. I don't know. I haven't seen him. Like, he wasn't NHL ready last year. That's all I know. He wasn't. And by the way,
there's two things here. I think there's
most guys aren't.
One is the Devils probably deserve a healthy amount of blame for that progression path and sticking him in that role. And the second thing is, there's always question marks about guys. And if you talk to teams and go back to his draft year, the big question for Nemec is, some teams that watched him really closely, does he actually have a passion to play? There's always a question. I think for Jiricek, it was about his mobility and his skating. With Nemec, it's, does he want to be a hockey player? Everyone's got different questions. So Be interesting to listen and find out the answer.
Yeah. Well, the thing on it, I think they felt that Kovacevic and Nemec might have been their number 6, Frank, and Kovacevic was going to come in and be the 7, but he's outplayed him. That's just a fact. So what do you do at that point? Do you say, well, we got a young guy and we're just going to hit one player's development doesn't trump the rest?
No,
right?
it has to be a meritocracy. You're right.
Yeah. So at that point, it's like, hey, this guy's outplaying you. Go to the minors, play well. Right. And hey, good answer to say I'm not asking for a trade, but I'm like, and hey, I want players to want to be in the NHL. Don't get me wrong, but there's different ways to go about it. And I think at times there's a little bit of, if I don't have it right away, and history tells you very few have it right away. Right. The NHL is not a teenage league, and most teenagers that are in there don't have success. There's the odd rarity that does, but most don't. And that hasn't changed. Right? Like we can go through the list of guys who are teenagers in the NHL who, they have some bumps and lots of them, Frank, never recover. They never recover. Right? So all of a sudden they're like, geez, they don't have the same confidence, the same swagger. That's a big deal. If you're Nemec, go down to the American League and dominate. And that'll be the best thing for you. Then you come to camp next year. And I think the decision, you're right, is what do you do with Kovacevic? Because if you sign him, then you're right. It doesn't look like there's an opening. But if you have 4 good players, maybe you trade one of them, right? And you move them around and, maybe you trade Brett Pesce, depending on it. If you look at Kovacevic and Nemec's development, but they're in no rush right now. And I think that I would have a very open conversation with Nemec about, hey, this is how we see you. And we just want you to keep developing. And you know what? If you earn a spot, no problem.
I think that's exactly how they would handle it.
Yeah. So, but New Jersey is a team that's going through a funk right now, and it's mainly because it can't score. So, and they've on paper they should have, and really on the season I think they're 15th in goals. So, not great, not awful, right? As you mentioned, like their defensive game has been outstanding. But I think it's clear what they need at the deadline. They need another score.
So, before we get to Tyler, I just want to eat a healthy dose of humble pie. Coming off of a 3-point game this weekend and a point streak of 8 points, Kakko, since he's arrived in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
13 points in 14 games. Am I wrong? Is this just a blip? Are you right? And what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought Kakko was like, he's shown signs in New York, a few years ago that consistency hadn't been there. So it's not like the player's completely absolved of it. But you can tell sometimes, Frank, if you're a player when the organization or the coach, whatever, doesn't really believe in you. I think you can sense that sometimes from players. It's pretty obvious, right? And every coach, everybody has a bias. We all, as a media person, everybody listening, everybody has a bias towards certain players. It's always going to be there. Kakko had some skill. Is he going to suddenly magically be a 76-point player? Like that would be great for Seattle. They would be killing it. They would love it. But I thought he could be, a 60+ point guy and in the future, maybe be an 80-point player. That's what he was drafted by. And I think he's performed better, but I've watched those games, man. And he looks like a guy who's got a new lease on life and feels like he's got some confidence. And in Seattle, he gets more opportunities because they don't have as many good players at the top of their lineup like they have in New York. Now you could make the argument that maybe New York should have given Kakko more of an opportunity, and that's valid. But, he more opportunity, he got into a better situation. Sometimes that's all you need is more minutes. Then you feel confident and it helps. You score early, Frank. You've been around the league, talk to any guy. Once you get some confidence, man, it's a lot easier to keep producing.
I kind of have shades of Eli Tolvanen here. And not to say that, again, I'm not saying that Kakko is no good or whatever. I'm just saying, just remember that exact type of scenario. Tolvanen, he wasn't a lottery pick, but still a first rounder. And as he played on after his draft, he was a way more highly thought of prospect. He put up some really good numbers in Jokerit and was looked at as a guy who could come in and be an instant difference maker for the Preds. He got to Seattle, and remember, he closed out that year after the waiver claim, 22-23, 27 points in 48 games, 16 goals in 48 games.
Yeah.
Each spot since then, he's regressed. Following season, a full season, only matched his previous 48 game goal total, 41 points. This year, 11 goals, 40 in 47 games, 18 points. Continued regression. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying, just remember that when you get excited about a 14-game run.
Yeah. I think, I don't know if Kakko is going to be this good overall. Because what did he have? He's got now 27 points on the season in 44 games, which, puts him on pace, 55-point guy. Obviously he's been very good these 14. He had 14 in 30 games with the Rangers. So, I thought he had potential to be a 60-point guy. And so if you look at the season, he's on pace, to be something like that. We'll see if it continues, but he's rolling now with some confidence and he's getting minutes, right? He's playing almost 17 minutes a night. So that obviously helps.
Confidence. It's the most powerful drug in the NHL.
Yeah. Let's bring in Ty Yaremchuk to the pod. Ty, how you doing?
I am doing great today, boys. A nice win. Frank, there is a 25% chance, just looking at it through the math, that we get a Bills-Eagles Super Bowl this year.
You guys got any side bets going on?
Tyler has been doing the Eagles-Bills parlay each of the last 2 Sundays. So Tyler has cashed.
I got a little money in my Bet365 account. But yeah, it could be an interesting Your Eagles are the odds-on favorite on Bet365, Frank. Plus 185 to win the Super Bowl.
I could see it. I mean, I just think they've got the easier path this weekend. I don't think that's an easy game for the Bills or the Chiefs. So I don't.
Wow. Hey, Jaden Daniels, they looked unreal in Detroit, man.
What did I say to you a few pods ago, though? Remember we were trying to figure out what the seeding would be, and I said I don't love the idea of the Eagles playing the Commanders in the first round because Jaden Daniels is legit.
Mm-hmm.
That said, that Lions defense looked ultra suspect on Sunday.
Well, yeah, I think there's a prime example of the injuries eventually will catch up to you.
Yeah, I mean, and the Commanders defense, that didn't really look good either. They gave up 31 and they looked meh.
Yeah. Well, hey, I loved it. It was an offensive game, man. We don't see that very often in NFL.
Not gloating, just saying. Yeah. I think they've got an easier path, which then makes sense for the odds, right?
Yeah.
Now let's be honest, Ty, before I get to it. When you watched Mark Andrews, you thought you were going to overtime. Like he's got the ball right in his hands. He's got the ball right in his hands.
Yeah. When I was watching it, my thought wasn't overtime. The Bills had all their timeouts in 93 seconds. I think Josh Allen probably moves them into field goal range. So I wasn't super worried about overtime. Also, with the new OT rules, everyone gets the ball. So I wasn't
way better in the playoffs.
But yeah, it was a heck of a football game. The most likely outcome, because you can bet on the exact way the season will end. Chiefs to beat the Eagles is the most likely at plus 325. The least likely is Commanders to beat the Bills at 18-1. But anyways, we'll put the football talk on the side. I got a couple of fill in the blank questions for you guys here on a Monday morning. Let me throw this your way because it's going to be my fill in the blank. You guys talked about all the right shot D-men that the Devils have. Maybe you send one over to Vancouver for JT Miller. But my question is, the team that would be the best fit for JT Miller, as the rumors keep swirling, is blank, Frank.
The Boston Bruins need a top end center. I think a true difference maker, and this has been a painful last couple weeks to watch for Miller, but I think you send him somewhere else and the switch just flips and he's back to being the guy that he was.
Oh, to me, it's the Carolina Hurricanes. You put him and Aho as your 1-2 center. Now you got a legit 1-2 center punch. And Jordan Staal is right up there with Lowry as elite third line centers, but I don't think they have a number 2 center in Carolina. And the other thing that Miller adds, he just adds a little tenacity. He's got a little edge to his
He's
game.
The perfect Rod Brindamore player.
Yeah. I think Carolina's the best. And Carolina's got lots of pieces if you want to make moves.
I was gonna, if you were gonna say someone else, I was gonna chime in again and say Carolina. Yeah. I think the caveat is the Canes just don't give up a ton. They're not a big free spending team when it comes to assets. And they've got to your point, they've got a ton of prospects coming. They didn't give up a first round pick or any of their top 5 prospects in the Jake Gensel deal last year. And they got maybe the best player that changed hands in the entire deadline period. This is a different scenario because Miller has term, but I think they're probably more tire kickers than anything.
Well,
So
they
if you're-
should be.
Let's
They
craft
should
it
be
the
the
other
one.
direction, though. Let's say you're Carolina. What are you giving up to make this deal? Marty Necas
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
and what?
Well, that's a good question.
Marty Necas and Jalen Chatfield? Marty Necas and
Yeah, like Chatfield would probably be the one, like, you're not going to want Burns. Obviously, not going to give you Slavin, and Orlov's probably too old in that deal. So yeah, Chatfield's the defender that makes the most sense. I wonder, would you do it though if they wanted Seth Jarvis?
I wouldn't.
Yeah. So that's kind of what
I don't know how you can move on from a 22-year-old who is in a deal for a guy that's Miller's age. You can't give up an 8 or 9 year age difference. You just can't do it. Yeah. But Marty Necas, though, I think that's a great starting point. So you go Necas and what?
Oh, Chatfield, I think, is because they want to improve their defense. So
does that deal actually make the Canucks better?
I think
Good question. Well, it weakens them because Necas isn't a center, right? So that it kind of weakens them there. I guess that's the one. Because if you look at their center icemen, right? Jordan Stahl, they're not, Aho, Cockney. I mean, like, I don't know, is it Necas and you throw in Jack Drury, thinking that maybe, Vancouver feels that Drury down the road can work out? Because right now, today, he's kind of their second line center in Carolina.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought.
So Dougie Hamilton for JT Miller straight up? No one's buying on that.
I still want to slap whoever thought Mika Zibanejad for JT Miller straight up made any sense.
Mika Zibanejad
rumor I ever heard.
He's second in the green jacket race in the NHL right now at -25. Like, come on.
Yeah, he's -25 in the look like I don't give a shit play meter.
Yeah.
Like,
not great. All right. Next one I got for you guys. Sticking out east. You didn't really talk about this team when you were looking at sort of the playoff picture a couple of minutes ago, but the Montreal Canadiens have a blank % chance at making the playoffs this year. Our friends at Bet365 have them at +400, which translates to about a 20% shot. But Greg's, where do you come out on the Habs? % chance to make the playoffs?
I was going to come in at 22, so that's kind of where I fit. They're, you know what? They're getting some unreal goaltending lately. So I don't know if you guys watched that overtime yesterday. Oh my God. And it was very entertaining, but they probably should have lost, but goaltending was out of this world. So I look at that. You know what, though? They're feeling it right now. They got a lot of guys, Caulfield scoring, Patrick Laine scoring, Suzuki scoring, Hudson brings them a ton of offense. So they're an exciting team. I'm not sure they're good enough defensively to get in, but I think they're confident. They're in the mix, right? They're in that mix. They're just, Boston doesn't look any better than them right now. Columbus, like the Rangers are still, I think, the most talented team of those, but Montreal will be there. I'm curious though, how close they will be coming out of, like, when we get back to March 1st, how close are teams. That's when I think you'll see the decision on some of these teams, if they're going to be sellers or small adders or just sit there and remain status quo.
8%.
Low.
I was thinking about 6. I like what the Habs have done this year. It was really important for them to show progress. I don't think they are internally looking at this team as a team with real playoff chance. And because of that, that's also going to dictate what they do at the trade deadline. Jake Evans, Mike Matheson, David Savard, like, you could see Joel Armia, if he has a good 4 Nations, you could see multiple players plucked off of this team between now and then that I think it's a single-digit % chance. And I also just think, by the way, look at what we just talked about with the Rangers. 6-1-3 in their last 10 games. The Rangers are the only team in that mix, outside of maybe the Bruins, that have enough talent to do that repeatedly, stack 10-game stretch after 10-game stretch, and get points like that. The Canadiens can do it for a chunk of time. They're not going to be able to do it between now and April.
Fair. All right, last one I got for you guys. I know we've been a little Oilers heavy today, but this one actually came into my DMs. We had Dennis who asked if I could ask you guys about Jeff Skinner. So, Greg's, I know you're not going to be on the next pod, so I wanted to get this one in now for Dennis. There is a blank % chance that Jeff Skinner is an Oiler past the trade deadline. Greg's?
Well, he's got a full no move. And
Yes.
Jeff Skinner signed in Edmonton. He wants to make playoffs. The only way I think he gets traded is if he gets traded to another, because he has to agree to it, to another team that's playoff bound. And
Who would want him?
that's my point. So I'm going to say pretty high % chance that he's no, you can't put him on waivers. So I think they just keep him as depth and you kind of go from there, right? Like they do have a lot of cap space with the Kane LTIR space. So they're not in a huge cap crunch. And you know what, if John Klingberg plays well, that now they got even more cap space to make an acquisition to what they want. So I'm going to say pretty high chance. I think Skinner is still an Oiler. I think, and you know, unless a team in the playoffs suddenly, you know, has a key injury in the left wing, it's like, God, we got to try to get a shooter here. I don't see how he's going to get moved.
Yeah, I was going to say 80%. The only thing that you could potentially do is just scratch him into oblivion. And then he's just so bothered by it that he wants to leave. I just think that's a really bad look for the organization as a whole. Look, we've addressed this already in this pod. Meritocracy is important, and I think there's good reason why Jeff Skinner has been scratched. That said, I think if you go out on a limb and really push to sign a guy and you ask him to take less money than what's available on the market and you give him the full no move, no trade as a protection on that because you wanted him so badly, that comes back to you. Like, you guys need to live with that as an organization, just like the Josh Brown contract, just like the others. That's an internal front office mistake, not a Jeff Skinner mistake. And yeah, players do need to hold up their end of the bargain, but I would argue that Jeff Skinner this season isn't vastly different than the Jeff Skinner we've seen last season and the seasons prior. So yeah, has there been more goal scoring and production? I guess, but he hasn't been a player that's had juice for a while. So I look at that and say, you went out on a limb to push. You can't ask for him to waive. So the only thing you can do if you really want to push it is make his life miserable at the rink and hope that he asks you. But I just don't know if that's the smart play.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you on that. All right, boys, that is a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Also, you should put a shout out, Frank. You know, we talk about some guys who are struggling. One guy who's not struggling, his team's rolling. Jason Robertson has really emerged for the Dallas Stars here post-Christmas. He is on fire. He's got, I think it's 6 or 7 multi-point games since then. He's got, he's currently on a 5-game point streak, but he has woken up for Dallas, and that's been a huge addition for that team.
So I'm knocking on wood here, but we haven't had a single long-term injury that has taken away a roster spot for a Four Nations team.
Nope.
Maybe you could raise an eyebrow at Linus Ullmark, and should he still go? I think that's an important question for the Sens to ask. But if Team USA has an injury, I think Jason Robertson played his way off of that team this season. Is he the first guy you're calling if you're Bill Guerin and you have an injury at forward?
Probably. He's got 8 goals and 19 points in the 13 games since Christmas. And you know what? A lot of it's, you want to get a guy who's going hot. I'm trying to think of another American player who's not on the roster at this point that you'd say, hey, I'll take him over Jason Robertson. Now, maybe it's positionally based, Frank. Right?
Well, I think that's the big thing that's probably lost in all of these discussions, right? It's like, well, if you lose a center, you're getting this guy. If you lose a winger, you're getting this guy. It also depends on, like, so Canada was really easily able to slot out, here are 4 guys that are playing center. That's one of the first exercises that this Team Canada management team did. So it's always a little more difficult in these kind of all-star like tournaments to figure out who that guy is. But a lot of these replacements, if there are any, do come back to position. They have to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's I think that's what it would come down to. But if they lose a winger, then I think it's a no-brainer. It's Robertson. He's got the most points in the NHL since Christmas. So he'd have to be the guy for the U.S. Now, for Canada, Scheifele or Hyman, I think, would be the two forwards.
Yeah, it's really a shame that Tavares got injured, because I think from a versatility perspective, he probably would have been on my list. His numbers were not at the same exact level as Scheifele, but pretty close. And I just think the idea that you can be a Swiss Army knife and also really reliable defensively, that's why Scheifele didn't make it. I think the management group felt like he was too one-dimensional. To answer your question, though, since the day the rosters were named, Jason Robertson, second among Americans in points. He has 28 in 23 games. Clayton Keller, also not selected, has 26 in 20.
Okay.
So Keller would be another great selection option.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And, you hope for any of the players named that there is no injury for them between now and the start of the tournament. We got 3 weeks before it gets rolling? 4, 3. So just over 3. Yeah.
It's still kind of a joke. I think when you look back at the way the selection process went, that Zach Hyman didn't get picked. I think this last run has just solidified that.
Yeah, I don't think Sam Bennett has a goal since the selection process since the team was named.
I can tell you if he does, because I have it right in front of me.
I'm pretty certain he doesn't. So December 4th, right? That's when it was named. So.
Yep. December 2nd was the day that they were due. But I know he didn't have one for a while.
He has no goals in his last 20 games.
Yeah. Sam Bennett.
Yeah.
One goal. He has 1 goal in his last 21.
Yeah. So, because the announcement, I know the team was picked on Monday, but it was announced on the 4th, right? So,
right.
Since the 4th, no goals.
But guess where Zach Hyman is?
Oh, I think he's second or third.
He's third. Yeah. Scheifele 1 with 15, Jordan Kyrou 2 with 13, and Zach Hyman 3 with 12.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that Doug Armstrong goes the homer pick and takes Kyrou?
I don't see how. Zach, it's not only since December 4th. It's just look at the last 2.5 years. Zach Hyman, there's only 5 Canadians with 100 goals, and Zach Hyman's one of them. He's got a way bigger sample size of being a productive player.
So would you go Scheifele if you're looking for?
Well, it depends. If you want a winger, it's Hyman, right? If it's a center, they lose.
But you're probably thinking I've got my 4 centers set already, right? Scheifele is, just on a math perspective, is likely to be, if anyone selected, is likely to be a winger rather than center.
No, but I'm saying, what if one of your centers are hurt?
Well, right, but then do you take another guy that you already selected and move him to center?
You could, because you have McKinnon, Crosby, McDavid, Point, Cirelli as center iceman, right? One of them's playing wing, probably Braden Point. But Braden Point could easily play center on your team, no problem.
But they probably pick Cirelli very specifically to play center.
Yeah, he's their 4th line center. So that's why I was saying, if you lose a McKinnon or a McDavid or a Crosby, which would obviously be terrible, you could play Braden Point as a center. No question. No question.
Getting close.
Yeah. So, it should be a hell of a tournament, man. I can't wait. Frankie, have yourself a great, and by the way, happy Martin Luther King Day for everybody in the United States. Just a huge impact, I would think, in your country on what he did and the awareness that he brought for many years for many people. So, I think it's great. There's lots of games today in the afternoon in the U.S. in honor of Martin Luther King Day. That's the rundown brought to you by Bet365. Use the promo code NATION, NATION, and get in on a wide range of games.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.